So Sony Pictures is realizing that movies about heaven sell, and they make a lot of money. Their last movie about heaven, 2014, Heaven is for Real, grossed more than $100 million. And they were like, wow, this makes so much money, we're going to do it again. And just on Thursday, Sony announced that they had signed Jennifer Gardner for their newest movie about heaven called Miracles from Heaven. Movies about heaven sell. Books about heaven sell. Even when the people who inspired the story about going to heaven and coming back say that they made the whole thing up. Maybe you heard about that. The boy who kind of told the story that inspired the book, The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven, has recently come out and said, okay, that didn't really happen, I made it up. And we should have known something was going on when his last name was Malarkey. True story. I'm like, and we were believing him in the first place? I don't know. But regardless, books and movies about heaven sell because they fascinate us. I mean, thinking about what might be. We want to believe that there is something beyond death. We want to believe that there is a place waiting for us where there's no more pain and no more sorrow and no more death. We want to believe that beyond the grave there is a place of eternal paradise called heaven where the righteous will live for eternity. We want to believe that this is going to be our eternal home, but unfortunately, that's not what the Bible teaches. Yeah. You're like, what? Am I in church? Heaven is not the end for the Christian. Contrary to popular belief, heaven is not where we will end up. We've been in this series now. This is our fourth week in a series called Why, in which we are asking the toughest questions all of us have to kind of grapple with at some point. Why is there so much suffering in our world? Why is there so much pain? Why is there so much evil and injustice? Why do bad people get away with doing bad things to good people? If God is so good, why doesn't He do more about the pain and the suffering and the injustice and the earthquakes in our world than He now appears to be doing? Why? And these are great questions. These are tough questions, and these are good questions to be asking right now. Because we've just come through a tough week. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's any worse than normal, I guess, but it's been a tough week. I mean, Baltimore is being, ripped apart by riots. Buildings are being burned. Stores are being looted. Hundreds have been arrested. Cops are being injured. Cops are being arrested. I mean, Baltimore is in bad shape, and we've all been shocked as we've seen the pictures and the videos of the earthquake in Nepal. Again, we've watched as the death toll just continues to mount. Again, over 6,000 now, some estimating as high as 60,000. We've heard the horrific living conditions, the lack of basic supplies. But more than just trouble and pain in other places, many of us experience and are experiencing suffering, pain, loss right now in our own lives. Many of us in this room right now are battling cancer. And we're asking the question, why? Why me? Why now? Why this? Many of us are going through relational difficulties, the kind of stuff that just seems to rip our lives apart, financial issues and worries that seem to rip the fabric of our lives apart. Many of us are dealing with depression, mental health issues that are seeming just to rip us apart. And in the midst of these, we ask the question, why? And we're trying to address those questions. And again, as Pastor Lisa mentioned, if you've missed the first three parts, we would invite you to our webpage or our YouTube channel where you can kind of catch up on where we have been as each part is kind of building on the last. But what we're saying is we want to be able to answer this question with just 4 words. Just 4 words that really give a biblical perspective on this question and form the Christian's worldview, how we answer this question of why there is suffering. And we've looked at 3 of those 4 words so far. And the first word we looked at is this word creation. And we began at the very beginning. We looked at God in his original, not his original context, but the original context in which He reveals Himself to us. Before we came on the scene, God creating a very good planet. It's beautiful, it's perfect, because He is beautiful and He is perfect. All of creation that He made was good because it's a reflection of who He is. And we see God's intention for us at the very beginning in creation is that we would only have life and love and joy and peace and vibrancy, that there would be no death, there would be no suffering. That was not His intention for us. His intention for us was good, very, very good. And we ended that week with this question. If this is who God is, if God is really good, can we in faith believe that he is good even when things or the circumstances of our lives are bad? That's what faith is. Can I say, even though I'm in pain, even though I'm at loss, even though I can't explain all the suffering in the world, I still believe God is good? And then week 2, we came to the second word, and that word is fall. This is a theological term that we use to talk about how man rebelled against God, that God created us with free choice because relationship, love demands that there be a choice. And so God gave us choice as to whether we would obey him and worship him and be in relationship with him, or whether we would rebel against him and kick him out of his own creation. And we saw how we chose the latter, that we chose to rebel against God. We kicked him out of his own creation. We said, we don't want you here. We asked him to leave, and he did. And how we've been suffering the consequences ever since, living separated from our life-giving creator, God. And so in week 2, we asked this question: what is the problem in our world? I am, is the answer. I am the problem in this world. Because even though I wasn't there to take that first piece of fruit in the Garden of Eden, I perpetuate the problem. Every time I rebel against God, every time I ignore somebody who is in need, every time I withhold an act of love, every time I rebel against him, I perpetuate the problem. I am part of the problem. And those 2 words really answer this whole question of why. Why is there suffering in the world? Creation fall. God made a great planet, a perfect planet, no death, only life. We ruined it. We kicked him out. Really, that answers the question. 2 words. But fortunately, there's a third and a fourth word, because God wasn't content to sit back and just let us suffer the consequences of our own choices. Last week, we saw this third word of redemption. That God made it clear to Adam and Eve right from the very beginning. The moment sin entered the world, God made it clear to Adam and Eve, I'm not going to leave you alone. I'm still with you. I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to win. And it's going to come at great personal cost to myself. It's going to cost me something to redeem you, to buy you back. It's going to cost you everything that I have. And eventually a Redeemer came. God himself in human form became one of us, entered into our suffering, took our sin, took our penalty, the penalty of our choices, took upon himself, and he took it to the cross. He died in our place, and as he died, he uttered those 3 significant words: it is finished. In other words, it is done. I have bought you back. The price has been paid. You have been redeemed. You are mine again. I bought you fair and square. It is finished. It means everything has been redeemed. Not only you, not only your sins have been paid for, all of creation is being redeemed. It's all been bought back. Not just people, but animals and plants, and all of creation has been bought back. It all belongs to God again. Well, that raises a question then. Okay, well, if he paid the price to win us back, to buy us back, if we have been redeemed, why are we still in the mess that we're in? And that's a great question, right? Why is the world still the way it is and seeming to get worse? Why is there still suffering if God has won us back, purchased us back? Well, we need one more word. One more word that's going to kind of complete our worldview, complete this picture that answers this question of why, and it's not heaven. Heaven is a real place. It's a place where believers will go for a time. And the idea of heaven is something that brings great comfort to us when we're in the midst of pain or loss or grief. Really. As a matter of fact, Jesus referred to heaven when he was dealing with his disciples, his friends, as they were dealing with great pain and great loss. It was the night before he died, and he was explaining to his followers, I'm going away, you're not going to see me for a while, I got to go back to heaven, but I'm going to send you the Comforter and all these things. But he looked around the room, and he saw the grief on their faces, and he said, I've got to, speak into this. And so he uses the concept of heaven to speak into their grief. And this is what he said. He said in John 14, verse 1, do not let your hearts be troubled. I wonder if he would say the same thing to so many of us today, in this room and in this world, in the midst of our loss, in the midst of our pain. Don't let your hearts be troubled. I believe he would say that to us if we're suffering loss, as we deal with the pain of loss in our own life, as we grapple with questions of what's happening in Nepal or in Baltimore or anywhere else in the world, as we deal with these things. Would Jesus look at you and say, don't let your heart be troubled? To which we may counter, Well, why in the world will I not let my heart be troubled? Do you see what is happening in my life? Do you see what is happening in the world? What reason would you give me for not letting my heart be troubled? To which he would then respond, well, let me tell you why your heart shouldn't be troubled. In my Father's house in heaven are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to heaven, to my Father, to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you there in heaven, I will come back, and I will take you to be with me in heaven, that you also may be where I am. So Jesus knew that in just a very few days, he was going to be resurrected. He was going to go back to his Father. He knew what it was like there. He knew the fact that it was beautiful, that it was something to hope for, something to bring comfort. And so he said, I'm going there. I'm going to prepare a place for you. And if I prepare a place for you, I'm going to come back. I'm going to get you. I'm going to take you to be with me. Therefore, don't let your hearts be troubled. This really is a comforting idea, isn't it? I mean, if this is true, if what Jesus is saying is true, this gives us hope. This gives us what we need to face the pain in our world, especially in the midst of loss and tragedy. I mean, we need the hope that things can get better. We need the hope that something better is waiting for us. I mean, this is a truth that our world needs. This is a truth that our community needs. Parker needs this hope, needs this truth. I'll never forget, a couple years ago, our accountability board was interviewing our mayor, and we were asking our mayor, what can we do as a church? We're a church that loves to serve our community. What are the needs that we're not seeing? And we finally asked him this question. We said, what's the top need? If you could just snap your fingers and resources weren't an issue, but you could miraculously make one problem in this community go away, what would it be? And he didn't have to think about it. He said, wow, if there's anything you could do about the epidemic of suicide in our community, that's what we need. You may be shocked to know the frequency with which people are taking their own lives in this community. Parker, this community that looks like it has everything, this community that people look like they're happy and wouldn't have a care in the world, are taking their lives with incredible frequency. I was just on a police ride-along 2 weeks ago as a police chaplain, and we made a call to a house right here in our community, 15-year-old who had just overdosed on some painkillers, trying to take his own life. Fortunately, we were able to get to him early enough. But the next day, another teenager in our community tried and succeeded, took their own life right here in our community. That week alone, just from my conversations with police officers, in that week, I knew of 3 suicides in Parker in 1 week. Just think about that. 3. I was at a meeting this week at the police department in which someone told me that on average, there is 1 youth put in lockdown because of an attempted, or they're saying they're going to kill themselves, per day in Parker. 1 teenager per day in Parker saying, I have no hope. This is a pandemic of hopelessness right here in our community. People look at their lives, they look at their world, and they say, what's the point? Things aren't going to get any better. The pain's not going to go away. And it's into this hopelessness that Christ followers need to bring the message that Jesus spoke of 2,000 years ago, that there is hope, that there is a better day coming. Hold on. Don't give up. Things will get better, not just in this life, but he is preparing a place for you. And he will come back and he will take us to be with him there. Just hold on. Don't lose hope. Don't give up. Heaven is a place that is intended to give hope in the midst of hopelessness, comfort where it seems that there could be no comfort. And while Christians do believe we will go to heaven when Jesus comes and we will be with him in heaven for a time, we also believe it is not our eternal home. It is not where we will be forever. The Bible teaches that heaven is only a temporary home until our permanent home is ready. And where is that permanent home? Look around you. It's right here. And it's what the Bible calls the new earth. And that is our 4th word that completes our worldview. It is new earth. That is the word that kind of completes the answer to this question of why. Why is there suffering? What is God doing about it? Well, he created a perfect world. We kicked him out of it when we failed and rebelled against him. He spent everything he had to bought it back. And now he is creating a new earth that we can inhabit for eternity, where there will be no more sin or death or suffering. The same John who was in that room 2,000 years ago when Jesus said, don't let your hearts be troubled, the same John who wrote those words down ended up writing the last book in the Bible, the book of Revelation. Now, The book of Revelation gets a bad rap. A lot of people misunderstand the book of Revelation. We get afraid of the book of Revelation because we think there are prophecies of doom in there and beasts that terrorize. And certainly in the book of Revelation there are prophecies and there are beasts. But the irony is that the book of Revelation is a book all about this one fact: Jesus wins. And so if you're on Jesus' side, there's nothing scary in the book of Revelation. Jesus wins. This is ironically a book that was meant to comfort Christians who are in the midst of great persecution and suffering. These people were going through hell on earth. They were experiencing horrible persecution from the Roman Empire, for one, as well as other surrounding influences. And so John is writing this book letting them know that vindication would come. And that's why we have all of the beasts and all of the prophecies of doom. These are people who are asking these questions. Why? When? How long? How long will you wait, God, until you come and vindicate us? And the beasts and all of that are basically saying, this is what's going to happen to those who continue to stand against you and don't repent. That vindication is coming. For those of you who are losing your heads and being imprisoned and losing your property. For those of you who are being burned. For those of you who are being fed to lions. God is not deaf to your cries. He hears your prayer. Something is going to be done. Take hope, be comforted. And as he gets to the very end of the book, the last 2 chapters, it's the end of the Bible. Jesus gives John a vision, a picture of our greatest hope, this final word, new earth. Let's look at just a snapshot of the description that Jesus gives to John, Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw a holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then he said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. All right, let's just kind of unpack this a little bit. Going back to verse 1, he starts by saying, then I saw. So in other words, he had seen something before, but now he's seeing something else. And Revelation chapter 21 follows Revelation chapter 20. And this is just a long string of things that John is seeing. Well, what happens in Revelation chapter 20? What had he just seen? And in Revelation chapter 20, we have this beautiful, fascinating prophecy known as the millennium. And if you read chapter 20, you see that during the millennium, this is the 1,000 years that we're in heaven and we're living there. That's the time that the redeemed are in heaven. But at the end of the millennium, then this is when this part happens. But what had just happened at the end of chapter 20 is that death and Satan and sin have all been dealt with forever. They have all been destroyed. So death is no more, Satan is no more, he has been destroyed, sin is no more, it's been wiped out of the universe. I mean, chapter 20 is a fascinating prophecy. It's one of my favorite topics in all the Bible. If you want to know more about it, I invite you to come to our What We Believe class in the modular right outside the door. We're going to be coming to that in a couple of weeks. If you can't wait, our YouTube channel, we have a video of that lesson. Just search Doctrine 101 Millennium, you'll find it. But fascinating prophecy that we don't have time to get into this morning. But after all of this, after death has been dealt with, sin, Satan, it's all destroyed, then John looks, and then he sees this new heaven and new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth have passed away. So God has recreated our sky. He has recreated our planet so they are new, completely new. And it's really interesting to note that in the Greek, there are lots of words in the Greek for our one word new that have different meanings and different nuances. For instance, in the Greek, one of the words for new is neos. And neos is a meaning for new that's kind of like in the order of time new, or kind of just in time or in structure or in order new. So in other words, if you have a phone and you're going to upgrade your phone and you go get a new phone, it's kind of like the old one. It's kind of new. I mean, it's kind of got some new features, but it's in every possible way, it's pretty much like the old one. So it's a neos, kind of a new phone. So if I were to make 10 things, the last thing I made would be the newest. It's in the order of time. Another word for new in the Greek is kainos. Kainos is new in a completely different way. It is new qualitatively. It is completely new and improved, so much better. So let me give you an illustration. Let's say you're going to trade in your iPhone 5 for an iPhone 6. Many of you have done that. And so, it's a new phone, but it's pretty much like the old phone. It's a little bit bigger, maybe it's a little bit faster, maybe the battery lasts a little bit longer, but it's pretty much the same as the old iPhone 5. It's Neos, new. Now, if you were to upgrade your phone from the iPhone 5 to like the iPhone 30, the new phone that allows you not just to talk on the phone or just to FaceTime, but it projects a life-size 3D hologram that you could interact with the person like they're actually standing there, that's Kainos. That is totally new in a qualitative way. It's like, whoa, above anything that we have ever experienced, kind of new. Well, the word John uses to describe the new earth is not neos, it's kainos. This is a qualitatively new earth and sky. It is so much better. It's kind of like what we have now, but so much better. God is kind of going back to the drawing board, and he's like, all right, I'm going to top what I did the first creation, because these are my special people, and I'm going to create something special for them, and so I'm going to make a new heaven and a new earth, and it's kainos new. You got it? It's qualitatively new in every sense of the word. And so what makes this kainos, new earth, so special? Well, there's a couple things I'd like to point out to you. First of all, if you didn't notice, not only new earth and a new heaven, but there's also a new Jerusalem, this big city. Now, if you're a city person, this is really good news. Now, any city people here? People like city with me? I know I'm in the minority. I love cities. And if you look at Genesis 1 and 2, there's no city. It's like all country. Now, if you don't like city, that's fine, because there's still plenty of space in the new earth to go out and kind of chill out in the country. Don't worry, you're not going to be crowded by city all the time. But if you're a city folk, you're like, wow, there is a city in the new earth. I like that. Now, the city is actually described. John tries to describe the city in the rest of chapter 21. And put yourself in his place. This is difficult to do. He saw this vision of this new earth, this new heaven. It's kainos new. He doesn't know how to describe this. How do you describe the iPhone 25 in human words? You can't do it. So he's trying to describe the city, and he's talking about jewels forming the foundation. There's like 12 foundations of jewels. And he says, like, each gate is made up of like one pearl. Like, what? And then like the streets are paved with gold, and you're like, wow, John, this is quite the description. But he's trying to describe it. And then he says, it's so big, it would take up half of the United States. It's 1,500 miles, each wall. It's a big, big city. You think New York is something. the new Jerusalem is going to be quite the city. So if you like the city, that's one thing that makes it kind of a kainos new thing. I'm excited. You're not. Okay. But the city isn't the only thing that makes it kainos new. What else makes it kainos new is this, chapter 3. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. You get the sense when God made us in Genesis 1 and 2, he wasn't going to live here. He was going to be in relationship with us, but he was just going to go back to his throne in heaven, wherever that was. But now, this kainos new earth, God says, I am moving my government. I'm moving the seat of my power from wherever it is right now to this new earth. Earth will now be the center of the universe. You're wondering to yourself, okay, well, what's so great about that? What's so great about being in God's presence? Isn't that kind of like being in church? Is this just going to be like an eternal church service? I could barely stay awake for the 75 minutes on Saturday morning. Are you telling me for eternity I'm going to have to sit and listen to someone talk about God? Or what is this? Listen, there's something so powerful about being in the presence of God that we can't fully comprehend, but we get a couple glimpses, particularly in the Old Testament, that let us know this is something that we should be looking forward to. You remember Moses. Moses knew God better than anybody. And Moses was begging God, God, would you just let me see you? I just want to see you. Show me your glory, God. Let me see you. And God's like, well, you're a sinner, and if I show you me, you'll die. You'll be gone. So I can't show you me. But here's what I'll do. I'm going to put you in this cleft, in this rock, in this cliff, and I'm going to pass by really quick. I'm going to let you see just a corner of my back. And that's what happens. And God passes by really quick. And Moses just catches a glimpse of the corner of God's back. And he was glowing for weeks. Moses was so enamored by just a glimpse of God's back that that's all he wanted to do for the rest of his life. Just let me see you again, God. I just want to see you again. Just that little glimpse of you is so amazing. In the book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah is given a picture of heaven as well. He describes what's happening around the throne room of God right now. He says that there are these angels that have 6 wings, and with some of their wings are covering their face, with some of their wings are covering their feet, and they are singing out in the presence of God, just in response to who he is. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. And they sing the song, it says, again and again and again for all eternity, because they can't get over how beautiful and how holy he is. Angels for eternity. Just say, it's like, okay, we've sung that chorus 6 times. Can we not sing it again? The angels sing the song for eternity because this is a picture of how holy and beautiful God is. And this is what it's going to be like to be in his presence for eternity. There's something that is just being in the presence of God that is so satisfying, that is so pleasurable, that is so exciting. We'll never get tired of it. We'll never get enough of it. We'll never get bored. And to the people who are in the midst of persecution, and Jesus is giving this picture of what is awaiting them, what is the first thing he says that God is going to do once he recreates the new earth? Verse 4, this is what he's going to do. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. And again, this is still in a quote. This is still the voice from the throne saying these things. This isn't John. This is the voice from the throne saying this. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things have passed away. This is truly kainos new. This is a completely new order of things. This isn't anything like what we have experienced before. The old order has passed away, and so there will be no more death, no more crying, no more mourning, no more grieving, no more pain. You know, sometimes the only way to really describe something that is indescribable is to talk about what it's not or what won't be there. Again, in Revelation chapter 21, John's going to try to describe what the new city will be like. And again, we kind of scratch our heads. We're like, a pearl for a gate, gold in the streets. What? I'm not sure what that would be like. I'm not sure I even like that. I don't know. But when he starts talking about the new earth, by what won't be there, then we can start to wrap our minds around what kind of new, what kind of place this will be. An eternity in the presence of God. An eternity in his beautiful creation. An eternity of exploring and learning and growing and loving and connecting and being challenged and traveling and experiencing, all without pain, tears, mourning, crying, all of that without sin, without suffering, without injustice, without evil, without dictatorships, without genocide. An eternity without divorce or disease or discouragement. I can get into that. I think we can get into that. In verse 5, this is what he says. He says, he who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Everything. Everything has been redeemed. Everything is being made new. Everything is being restored. And just as we start to ask the question, can this be? I mean, really? I mean, is this just like some kind of a fairy tale to try and comfort us amidst our pain, but it's not really real? Is God just kind of selling us a line here? Just as we start to think that, God then he said, write this down. For these words are trustworthy and true. Don't doubt this. This is true. And you kind of get the sense that Jesus is kind of giving this vision to John. And Jesus looks down, there's John. He's just standing there like, he's kind of zoned out. He's just overwhelmed. And so Jesus says to him, hey, snap out of it. Write this down. Get your pen. You need to write this down. This isn't just for you. This is for others who are in pain, who are in suffering, because they're going to hear this and they're going to doubt it. But I want you to write this down, that these are words that are trustworthy and they are true. The one who says it is reliable. God knew that we would struggle with this. And so John writes down these words. This is trustworthy. This is true. We can just hear Jesus dictating these words to him almost. I will do this. This is the point of everything that I have done for you. Don't doubt it. This is the end of the story, but it's also the beginning of the story for all who believe that, again, at creation I made everything new. I intended only life and relationship, but then you chose to rebel against me and you fell and you brought sin and death and suffering and pain into the world. But I wasn't content to watch you slip away, and so I spent everything I had to buy you back at great personal cost to myself. And right now I'm going to restore a new earth where there will be no more death, and there will be no more injustice, no more suffering, and no more pain. And so hold on. Don't give up. Don't lose hope. This is trustworthy. This is true. This will happen. A family was vacationing at a lake house, and Dad was kind of puttering around in the boathouse, and his 12 and 3-year-old son were kind of playing down around the dock, and the 12-year-old was supposed to be watching the 3-year-old, but he got distracted. And the 3-year-old thought that would be a great time to go down and check out that shiny, pretty fishing boat at the end of the dock. And so he went down to the end of the dock, and he put one foot on the boat and one foot on the dock, and he lost his balance, and he fell into the water. The 12-year-old heard the splash, alerted him, and so he screamed, and Dad came running from the boathouse. He quickly surveyed what happened. He jumped into this murky water, and he began swimming around at the base of this dock, looking for his 3-year-old son. But it was so dark he couldn't see anything. He came up for a breath of air, and just sick with panic, he went back down. He's looking for his son. He's feeling all over the bottom of this lake, which is about 7-8 feet deep. He's feeling around. He has to come back up for a breath, and as he's coming up, he feels his son, who has wrapped himself around the post of that dock, and his hands were in a death grip, and he's holding onto this post with everything he had 4 feet under the water. And the father was able to pry this boy's fingers off of the post, and he pulled him back up to the top. And after both of them had kind of caught their breath and the adrenaline kind of stopped flowing through their systems, the father asked the question, "What in the world were you doing? Why were you holding on so tightly to that post, so deep under the water?" And the son just gave a classic answer. He said, "I was just waiting for you, Dad. I was just waiting for you." Yes, our world has pain, and it has suffering, and it has questions that we don't really understand, hard times, or times things don't make sense, and we're tempted to give in to doubt. We're tempted to give in and lose hope. We're tempted to just give up and even end it all. But these words are faithful. These words are true. God has done something to deal with the problem of suffering. God is doing something to deal with the problem of suffering. God will do something to deal with the problem of suffering. So just hold on. Just wait for Him, and He will come, and He will make all things new.